His gift of gab and reputation for delivering the God's honest truth has helped Charlamagne Tha God get where he is today as a radio personality, the CEO of his own production company, and a cultural commentator. But the Breakfast Club co-host argues that small talk isn't part of his journey to becoming one of media's most influential voices. He explains it all in his latest book, Get Honest or Die Lying: Why Small Talk Sucks. Charlamagne Tha God joins me now. Charlamagne, I'm not going to lollygag here. I'm not going to go on and on. You write in the book you have an aversion to small talk. That's been your superpower all these years. Why is that?
I just like to get right to it. You know, my father always told me the fastest way between 2 points is a straight line. And, you know, one thing I've learned, especially being in this corporate world, you know, I work for, you know, iHeartMedia, partnered with iHeartMedia with my podcast network, The Black Effect. We sit down at these advertising meetings and it's like they want you to schmooze. I'm not good at schmoozing, right? And it's so funny because like when you'll come into these meetings and you'll know whatever, you know, advertiser is there, and I'll straight up tell them like, look, we don't have to make any small talk. Like we don't have to do any of this. Like let's talk about life. Let's talk about the world. Let's talk about what's going on, you know, in society. And usually those conversations are the best because, you know, you end up wanting to do business with somebody that you genuinely like. So, yeah, I just rather get to the gist of the conversation as opposed to, you know, circling around it, you know, before we talk about what we came to talk about.
I don't know, like not schmoozing, especially here in Washington, might not fly. Do you ever think that not engaging in small talk has hurt you in some way?
No, because it's fake. Like you go in these rooms in Washington, everybody knows why they're there. Like, so like, it's almost predatory in a way, right? Because if you know you want to talk to me about something or you know you want something from me, everything you're saying prior to that is complete BS. It's absolute nonsense. And I'm an energy person, right? So I would rather get to know you. I would rather, you know, build with you on a whole other personal level before we do anything professionally. Or, you know, even if we don't do something professionally, I just like to get to know people. Like, you know, all of my best business ventures have come, you know, from me just developing real relationships with people. Like I like real relationships. I don't like relationships that are, you know, rooted in what a person can do for me. And I think a lot of times that's what small talk leads to, because if you genuinely want to get to know me on a personal level, when we make that connection, then things may develop, you know, on a professional level. But yeah, it's just like, why BS me? I know why we're here, you know? So let's just get to whatever the conversation is supposed to be.
I want to talk to you a little bit about politics. You said in 2020 you endorsed Kamala Harris, not because of her public persona, but because of private conversations that you had with her. How is the private Kamala Harris different from the public one?
I think you're starting to see her a lot more now. But it's just like that with any politician, right? I feel like, honestly, before Donald Trump, everybody was small talking America. You know, everybody was telling America what they wanted to hear. That's what politicians do. Like, you know, most of the time when it's election season, it's dream selling season. You know, you go around and you tell everybody, you know, exactly what it is they want to hear to garner their support. And one thing I've given the MAGA Republicans a lot of credit for, the Donald Trumps of the world, the Marjorie Taylor Greens, I feel like, you know, they killed the language of politics. And, you know, in my new book, Get Honest or Die Lying: Why Small Talk Sucks, I reference, you know, one of my favorite movies, which is Bulworth, because I remember when President Obama said his second term, he said, I'm gonna go Bulworth in my second term. He didn't, but just when I heard him make that reference, I was like, yes, that's actually what we need. We need a politician, you know, saying things that are honest, you know, whether we agree with them or not. Like, you know, when you hear Donald Trump say he wants to be a dictator for a day, when you hear Donald Trump, you know, tell everybody that, yo, just vote this one time, Christian, vote one more time. You'll never have to vote again. They're saying all of these things out loud. They're letting you, when he goes to the Supreme Court and tells the Supreme Court, I want presidential immunity for crimes, he's saying all of these things out loud. So if he can say those type of things out loud, why can't the Democrats or the liberals or the progressives, the people that, say they're on the right side of things, how come they can't speak their so-called truth just as honestly? If people like Trump and MAGA Republicans can be so sincere, about their lies and their misinformation, how come the Democrats can't be sincere about, their so-called truth and accurate information? So to answer your question, I just think that a lot of politicians right now are getting the confidence to actually show up and truly be themselves. And I always thought that about, the vice president. Two things that I really love right now, and you just mentioned it, like, my critique of the vice president was the person I met in 2017, the person that we used to see grilling people in Senate hearings. That individual had disappeared over the last 4 years, but over the last couple of months, with her being on the road for her economic opportunity tour, or even the way she stepped up after Biden's terrible debate performance, and now her being at the top of the ticket as the Democratic nominee, what we've seen since Biden made the announcement that he won't seek re-election, that's the person I know off air. That's the person who I supported and was on the campaign trail with in 2020. Like, I see her front and center, and that is very refreshing and very promising. And I hope she stays on that path and doesn't listen to anyone trying to get her to be anything but herself. Like, she is more than enough. And if the real her continues to show up over the next 90 plus days, she'll be in good shape come November.
Along those same lines, you said that one thing that former President Trump does have is this perceived authenticity. Are there any Democratic lawmakers, you mentioned some Republican ones, who have maybe the same perceived authenticity? Are there any Democratic ones who possess it? And how do they get it when they've been working so hard to develop their political identity?
If you would have asked me this question 3 years ago, I'd have been like, hell no. But right now, I think the Democrats have a fantastic bench. Like, they have people that I actually enjoy, not only talking to when they come to my radio program, The Breakfast Club, but also I enjoy hearing them. Governor Josh Shapiro from Pennsylvania is one of those people that's at the top of that list. Governor Gretchen Whitmer, Big Gretch. If you read her book, True Gretch, which I recommend everybody reads. It's a very quick read, so it's only like 180 pages. She's one of them. Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett. We all know, we saw what she did to Marjorie Taylor Greene, in that hearing. Those three in particular, and the vice president, Kamala Harris, right now at the top of the ticket. This person that we've seen over the last couple of weeks, that is, somebody who I know can really, really speak truth to power if they choose to, And one thing I like about Gretchen Whitmer, like, if you read her book, she talks about the power of dirty jokes. Like, she talks about, liking that kind of humor. Secretary Pete too. He's another one. He's another one that really, I believe, is just honest. You ask him a question, you're going to get a real answer. Those individuals I just named, if you ask them a real question, you're gonna get a real answer. So, yeah, those are the people I would put at the top of that list.
Some of those folks have been named as potential vice presidential picks for Harris. Do you think the vice president pick makes a difference? Or J.D. Vance for former President Trump?
I don't know if it historically has, but the last few elections, it definitely has. Like, I voted for the Biden-Harris ticket because of, Kamala Harris. There was nothing inspiring about, President Biden in any way, shape, or form to me. And, there were things like, the 94 crime bill that I just felt like I hadn't seen enough atonement, about over the years. So it's like, for me, I voted for that ticket because of the vice president. And I think it's going to be this year too. Like, we can't sit here and act like she doesn't need a straight white male. It's all of these talk about DEI hires. Like, she needs one. like she's going to need a straight white male, to convince, a lot of those people in middle America that she's the person that should be on the ticket. Just like when President Obama ran in 2008, they needed somebody like a Vice President Biden to make people feel comfortable, to vote for the first black man. And it's the same thing with, the vice president now. Like she definitely needs, a straight white male to make America comfortable. I don't know. There's no need for us to lie about it. There's no need for us to act like, that's not what it is. It's just the facts. She needs a straight white male on the ticket. And I hope there's a couple of people that I hope it is. I don't know if that's your follow-up question, but I hope that it's, I like Governor Josh Shapiro a lot. My man Tim Ryan from Ohio, he's not in the picture, but he's another guy that I really enjoy. I would throw him in there too, as far as being honest. One of those truth tellers in the political for Democrats. But yeah, I hope. Long story short, I hope it's Governor Josh Shapiro she picks as vice president.
What does it mean to you personally to turn on the TV and see a black woman as the first nominee for a major party?
Listen, it's historic, right? Because I got 4 daughters, so representation does matter. Like, when you can see somebody that looks like you in those positions of power, it definitely inspires you in a real way. But then, you look at somebody like Donald Trump, who's the executive producer of Celebrity Apprentice, never had any political background whatsoever, and he became president. So that can inspire you too, right? Because think about how exceptional somebody like a President Obama has to be to get in that position. Think about how exceptional somebody like, Vice President Kamala Harris has to be to get in that position. Meanwhile, this guy comes straight off a reality show set and becomes president, right? So that sadly is inspiring too. That's why you saw all of these celebrities saying, hey, well, I can be president because the bar was put in hell after Trump. But, when it comes to the vice president, it is inspiring, right? But I don't want people to get caught up in that. Like, when you see Donald Trump attacking her identity, when you see Donald Trump focusing on race, focusing on gender, and then you see that dominate the news cycle for the last 48 or 72 hours, it's like, we shouldn't even be thinking about that. What we should be thinking about and what we should want from our candidates is somebody that's up there, over the next 90 days, talking about how to put money in people's pockets, talking about how they're going to keep us safe. I care about the agenda. I care about, the issues that a person is campaigning on more than I care about their identity.
You mentioned former President Trump attacking Harris's identity. He did mock her heritage at a National Association of Black Journalists conference recently, saying she was always of Indian heritage and then happened to turn black, in his words. You said that the media should ignore it. I got to press you a little here. Is that realistic? Is that fair to ignore a former president who's the Republican nominee?
I'm not saying, well, yeah, I think it is fair because we know he don't have any new tricks. Like we saw this, when back in the day with Obama with the birther movement, like that's what he does. He focuses on identity, he focuses on race. He's going to focus on the vice president's gender because he doesn't have anything else, like literally nothing else. Donald Trump, as of right now, since they've announced, that Vice President Harris is going to be his opponent, I haven't seen any strategy against her whatsoever other than she's a DEI hire, weaponizing the fact she doesn't have kids, questioning her blackness. Like, yeah, we should ignore that. Like the media should focus on whatever candidate is talking about the issues. I truly feel like anything else is just a waste of our time. And I mean, he does that on purpose. Like he purposely does that to distract, to distract from talking about actual issues. Like we got 94 days left, before this election. The American people want to hear what these folks are going to do for them. Like, I don't think that they're tripping off, Kamala's identity. Like they want to know what the vice president is going to do for them. They want to know what Donald Trump has planned for them. Like this should all be agenda-based, policy-driven. I think that the media could ignore it if we chose to.
You've called former President Trump a fascist, a bigot. You said he doesn't care about democracy. If all the things you say are true, how is this race so tight? Is roughly half the population voting for Trump at this point?
That's a great question. I think that's one of the reasons, last year I was calling for President Biden to step down because I couldn't understand why the race was so tight. I mean, I think this time last year, if I'm not mistaken, or this time last election, President Biden was up by like 10 percentage points. And for everything, when you think about all of the things that Trump has done, the 2 impeachments, all of the different indictments, leading an attempted coup of this country, like the bad handling of COVID, like we saw all of that. So that's what was so scary to me when it came to, President Biden. I'm like, I thought it was a fair question to ask, is the Biden-Harris ticket a winnable ticket in November? And if the answer is no, then, they should make some changes. And I remember President Biden saying last year there was 50 other Democrats that could probably beat Trump. So I was like, well, line them up, because I do not believe that you can do it. And, it's not about whether or not Donald Trump is a threat to democracy. We say that, like you said, Charlamagne, you said he's a threat to democracy. No, he actually is. He said he wanted to terminate the Constitution to overthrow the results of an election. Like, he led an attempted coup of this country. And I think that, right now, everybody should be focusing on the Supreme Court. Like, the Supreme Court is no longer a legitimate institution. The same Supreme Court that Donald Trump put 3 Supreme Court judges on. I'm glad that Joe Biden is calling for Supreme Court reform now, but it's going to take a lot more, than that to stop the corruption that is going on with the Supreme Court. When you look at the recent rulings of the Supreme Court, whether it's abolishing Roe v. Wade, whether it's, the presidential immunity, for presidents to get away with crimes, whether it's the fact that elected officials can take bribes now, it's like, what happens in November if the vice president wins and then Donald Trump challenges the results of the election? In light of all of those recent rulings, what makes us think the Supreme Court wouldn't overturn the results of an election? That's honestly what I see coming. I see that happening right now. I think that is going to be the biggest constitutional crisis of our lifetime come November. So to answer your question, I don't know why, things are so tight, because they shouldn't be. And I think that over the next couple of weeks, we're going to see, at least in the polls, I think we are going to see a little distance put between, the vice president and former President Donald Trump.
You are predicting that, just to be clear, that the Supreme Court will overrule the election results if Vice President Harris does win in November.
I don't see how anybody can't see this coming. I really don't. Like, it's almost like the fight is fixed. Like, Donald Trump literally said to a group of Christians the other day, just vote for me one more time. All you got to do is vote for me one more time, and you'll never have to vote again. They are saying the quiet parts out loud. The Supreme Court is no longer a legitimate institution. Those 3 conservative judges that he added to that court, when you just look at their recent rulings, I mean, presidents having immunity from criminal prosecution, issuing rulings that effectively legalize bribery for state and local officials, abolishing Roe v. Wade. I'm 46 years old, and people have less constitutional rights now in 2024 than they did when I was born. Like, I don't see why people can't see this coming. What is going to happen in November when Donald Trump challenges the results of an election? And to your point, it's probably going to end up, being a close election. What's going to happen when he challenges that? What makes us think the Supreme Court is going to do the right thing? And another thing, Democrats never have any defense against voter suppression. Their only defense against voter suppression is, we have to have the largest voter turnout in the history of America. They definitely weren't getting that with President Biden. The vice president gives them a better chance of getting that. But yes, to be 100% clear, I absolutely believe that come November, if he loses, right, Donald Trump is going to challenge the results of the election, and I think the Supreme Court would overturn the results of the election. In light of all their recent rulings, I don't know why we would expect them to do the right thing.
As you mentioned, you've been critical of both Trump and President Biden before he exited the race. You called them both trash candidates. Would you campaign for Harris?
I think so. Yeah, I campaigned for her in 2020. I don't. You see, the campaigning thing is kind of tricky, right? Because one thing I feel like I've learned not to do is I don't want to tell people who to vote for. I'm just going to tell people, you know, why I'm voting, and I'm an issues person, not an individual person. Even though I do like, her as an individual. I like her as an individual. Like, I like her energy. I've had the pleasure of having off-air conversations with her since 2017. First time she was on the Breakfast Club was 2018. I was interviewing her when she was in the Senate. So I do like her as an individual. But yeah, I just feel like I don't want to put that pressure on my listeners. I want people to make their own decisions. What I've been telling my listeners and my audience is, go out there and do your research on both candidates. Trump and former President Trump and Vice President Harris. Go out there and do your research on both candidates, and vote your interests. That's what I've been telling folks to do. I've been telling folks my concerns. Like, I will let you know I do think Trump is a threat to democracy, and here's why. I'm not sitting here acting like Vice President, Kamala Harris is the perfect candidate. Like, I'm still going to be critical of her, and I'm still going to hold her accountable. I think that you should hold the people you actually support and would vote for accountable. So I don't know. That's the answer to that question. I don't know. Maybe I'm campaigning for her right now because, I'm definitely supporting her campaign just by vocalizing what I'm vocalizing now. So I don't know. I don't know if I don't know. I don't know. That's the answer to the question. I don't know.
If you had to make a prediction today, had to put a percentage on it, what chance do you think Kamala Harris has of winning in November?
Ooh. Listen, I don't have any reason to believe Kamala Harris cannot beat Donald Trump other than it's never happened in this country, right? There always has to be a first. People saying America never voted for a Black woman, never elected a Black woman or a Black Indian woman. That's true, right? But people never voted for the executive producer of Celebrity Apprentice until they did. People never voted for a convicted felon with all those criminal charges until, they did. Like, they'll get the opportunity to do it in November. So these are unprecedented times. And there are no sure bets. Styles make fights. And I think that the vice president is tailor-made to go against this particular opponent. Like, if y'all want to talk about, her identity, then talk about her as a woman who can really speak to Roe v. Wade being abolished. She can speak to women's reproductive rights being taken away in a way that no man can, and he's the guy who takes credit for getting them abolished. So she can go right at him with that. She can go right at him, her being the prosecutor, him being the criminal. So styles make fights. People are energized. My biggest concern is the Supreme Court. That's literally one of my biggest concerns. So once again, I know you want a definitive answer. The reality is I don't know. I have no idea. I hope she wins, but I have no idea if she will.
What will you do if former President Trump does win in November?
Look for a new job, because he's coming for the journalists. I'm not a journalist, but he's coming for any media personality that has been outspoken against him. That is another thing that they have said out loud. They have literally said out loud that they are going to punish members of the press. Like, I'm not making any of this stuff up. Like, that's the crazy part about it. All of this stuff you can actually go look up yourself. They literally said they have a list. They have people in the press that they are going to punish, for, speaking out against them. Like, we are going to be under, the beginning stages of some type of authoritarian rule. And yeah, what am I supposed to do? I'm an American. Like, I'm not one of those people that's like, I'm gonna move. Like, I don't have citizenship anywhere else. Like, everybody's lying to themselves when they say things like that. I'm gonna move if Donald Trump wins. No, you're not. So there's only two things that, we can do right now. You can either, roll over and just take it and just, expect what's coming, or you can fight. And when I say fight, I just mean like at the ballot box. I'm definitely not talking about the kind of fighting that former President Trump be talking about. But that's the only thing I can think to do. Fight at the ballot box. Go out there and vote, because this is the first time in my lifetime that when people say, "Hey, that guy over there is a threat to democracy," I truly believe it. And I think that's one of the reasons that people don't necessarily believe it like they should. And that's because Democrats have demonized every single presidential candidate, that has been a Republican throughout my whole life, from Reagan to Bush Sr., Bush Jr., even John McCain, Mitt Romney, like any of these people that were, on the other side of the ticket, got demonized in the way that Trump actually should, get demonized. So once again, I know I'm saying this a lot. I don't know what I'm going to do if Trump wins again. I just hope he doesn't win again. And I know I don't know isn't a popular answer, but I'm not one of these people that just makes up things to sound good. I really don't know. None of us, and by the way, none of us do. None of us know what we're going to do.
None of us do.
None of us do.
You said fight at the ballot box. Would you ever consider being on the ballot yourself? Would you ever run for public office?
I do not know why this question has been coming up a lot lately. Like, people have been asking me this, not even just nobody. I don't think anybody's ever asked me in an interview. Not that I can remember, but just randomly people have been saying things like that to me. And once again, I don't know. I am not a person that, will rule anything out, because I was born in 1978. And one thing I've learned about life is that you just never know. Like, there's positions that I'm in now that I cannot believe I'm in this position. So you just never know what God has planned, and you don't rule anything out. Like, I'm the type of person that I truly want to be of service. Like, that's what I want to spend the rest of my life doing. I want to spend the rest of my life being of service. So, I'm a real big mental health advocate. I'm real big on, just trying to put people in positions to be economically empowered. So any way that I can be of service and genuinely help people keep food on their table, genuinely be healthy physically, mentally, and spiritually, and genuinely be safe, I'm down to do that. And if that leads me to something in politics, I'm not ruling that out. So once again, I don't know.
But you're not ruling anything out. The big question is, would you run under your real name, Leonard McKelvey, or would you run under Charlamagne Tha God for president?
It would definitely be under Leonard McKelvey, but it would be a bunch of people that call me Charlamagne, just because that's what they know me as. I mean, Arnold Schwarzenegger ran for governor of California, and everybody still called him the Terminator. So it just is what it is. The President Donald Trump was the president. I still refer to him as the executive producer of Celebrity Apprentice. So, it's just, yeah, you just never know. Like, I mean, you do know it will be your government name, but people are always going to call you what they know you as. By the way, I'm not saying this is something that I want to do. I'm just simply saying I don't know, because I could tell you no right now, and God will be like, okay, I hear your good plan, but I got this plan for you. So you just never know. So that's why I say I don't know. I think I don't know is a good answer. I actually have a chapter in my book where I talk about, there is such power and such strength in saying I don't know. There's not, like, I don't know is amazing. That's why when people say ignorance is bliss, that's what they mean. Like, I don't know. I don't know is so freeing.
The next book can expand on I don't know. This book is called Get Honest or Die Lying. Charlamagne Tha God, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I read The Hill all the time, so I appreciate being on the platform. Thank you.
Thank you so much.